Continuing on with our July rallies. This is the second rally in the month of July, during a month during which we're exploring the relevance of our founding principles and our founding documents to current events and life in the 21st century. So please welcome back to Justice Southbury, Michael Carrington.
Thanks a lot, Rick. I certainly echo a lot of Rick's sentiments on what happened yesterday, and that certainly changed what I was going to speak about today. I don't have any notes, so I'm just going to kind of riff a little bit on my own knowledge of history. I was a history major, love history, love the founders, love American history. And I just want to talk about the founding principles here in 2024 with respect to political violence and what was contemplated, what was the reality in the 18th century, 19th century, 20th century, and now 21st century. Unfortunately, these are currents that are not unique to any one time period, but I do think the way we respond can be a uniquely American thing, and that is through the legitimacy of the ballot box and through elections, free and fair elections. So first and foremost, our founders were products of the Enlightenment, and that was a sense of bringing order to disorder. It was a way of kind of balancing things and understanding human nature and offsetting human nature and respecting property rights and individual liberties. And that was what really formed the background of a lot of our founders when they came together. We see this reflected in the Declaration of Independence in 1776. Which we just celebrated the 4th. Happy belated 4th of July. But of course, that document didn't just make a new nation. It declared its independence, but that independence was still required to be fought for. And of course, we had the Revolutionary War. And it was not just a legal proceeding. Thousands of people died. Thousands of people starved. There were malnutrition. There were, war is hell. It was hell back then. It's still hell today. Benjamin Franklin famously remarked afterwards, someone said, "Oh, wasn't that a good war?" And he said, "There's never been a good war." And, I think that was even the victor saying that. So obviously we started with a war. How are we going to reduce that? When our founders were looking at the recent history, they were looking at revolutions, an age of revolution, an age of kings being executed, an age of all kinds of political violence. How do you create a system that people have faith in the here and now, but how do you create a system that sustains? And how do you create a system free of political violence? I mean, in a lot of ways, all violence is political violence to some extent. So how do you do that? And this is where I think the founders had a certain genius involving the separation of powers. And the commitment was self-government. And what did they do? Well, we know a little bit about the Constitution. I don't want to get too schoolhouse rocks, but they separated the powers between different branches. They separated that for factions, for geographic. They did this as a way of promoting domestic tranquility above all else, so that everyone felt they could see themselves in this government, no matter what of the 13 colonies, well, now 13 states, regardless of what state you lived in, now you could see yourself in the federal government. Regardless of what part of that state, you could see yourself in the federal government. So if you were a farmer from outside, the outskirts of Pennsylvania, you didn't feel like you had to be dominated by Philadelphia. You had a voice too. So they decentralized the power in a remarkable way that I think was really ahead of its time, and something we can say, wow, good job, founders. And they were very, very cognizant, though. A lot of them wrote very privately about how this was going to work, how this was going to sustain. Alexander Hamilton, in particular, was such a pessimist on human history. He foresaw in his writings there's going to be challenges, violent challenges, constantly. He was born in the West Indies, where there were lots of violence, as an everyday occurrence and attacks. And he was he didn't love human nature, put it that way. He was a very pessimistic guy in a lot of ways. And a lot of the Federalist Papers, when they talk about why are we doing this, they keep saying, well, if men were angels, we would have no need for this. And Rick talked about appealing to the better angels of our nature. Well, we're not angels, okay? We have people who get frustrated, people who want to consolidate things, people who disagree, and people who might not always see an outlet for those disagreements, and that can kind of beget violence, and that's scary. You know, whether that's a 20-year-old or whether that's a whole group of an army, those are scary times. But we were able to, in our history, secure to the best we could against political violence in the form of staggered elections, staggered terms, and the fact that every 2 years we'd be kind of renewing things and switching things up peacefully. And we did that. And the first challenge we had was not that long after the Constitution, election of 1800. For the first time, you had an opposing party taking control of the presidency. That was a bitter election. The types of language we use today are different, but I would tell people, go back and read what they were writing in 1800. It was every bit, it was different. It was maybe a little more eloquent, fewer misspellings, but it was pretty awful. There very much could have been another revolution in 1800. But there wasn't. Adams went back to Massachusetts. He was frustrated. You know, he thought maybe he won the election, but he kind of went back. Jefferson assumed power. We averted crisis, and we kept going. Next time we were challenged was 1824. Andrew Jackson won the most votes. He won the most electoral votes. He didn't win enough to win the presidency because there were 4 people who ran. The House of Representatives, so these are really know your civics, they did that, one state, one vote thing, and John Quincy Adams emerged as the president. Well, Andrew Jackson was not happy about this. A lot of his supporters said, you're a general, raise an army, attack D.C., do it. It'll be wild. And Jackson, you can say a lot of things about Andrew Jackson, and a lot has been said, but to his credit, he said, nah, I'll get him in 4 years from now, and he did. He didn't have any violence. 4 years from then, he won the presidency, and he won it again. And then a quick note on Jackson and some of these other leaders. They only stayed 8 years. There was no amendment, but they understood the wisdom of leaving office peacefully, passing the torch on to the next generation. So America's still fledging along, and then, of course, we get to the Civil War era. And this is, of course, the greatest test of political violence. In the times preceding the war, you had Bleeding Kansas, just sacks of gangs roaming around Kansas, lots of violence, lots of executions, horrific stuff. In the halls of Congress, you had Senator Charles Sumner of Massachusetts beaten to within an inch of his life in the halls of Congress simply because he impugned the dignity of the South. Very bad stuff. Obviously, a war came. That was hell. War is hell. That comes from William Sherman. And then the Reconstruction period. So there's been a lot of political violence in American history is what I'm saying. And every time, I hope we emerge better from it. And then just to gloss over, we had violence with, certainly Reconstruction. We had race riots. We endured labor riots. We endured January 6th. I don't think we can divorce ourselves from that. I don't think we've even fully reconciled what happened. That's the only time in our country's history where we did not have a peaceful transfer of power. And we're still waiting to see where the proceedings on that go. But it was ugly. It was very ugly. And we can't necessarily divorce where we are now from where we were then. Those were organized political violence or semi-organized political violence. Then you have assassinations. And these are extremely destabilizing because they're often one horrible, misguided person. We've had 4 presidents assassinated. We've had several candidates assassinated, attempted assassinations against presidents, and attempted assassination yesterday. And to echo Rick's comments, I absolutely wish President Trump and his family well. No one deserves political violence. We do have to speak with one voice condemning this whenever, wherever it occurs, to whoever it occurs. Because the only legitimate, no matter how much we disagree, and we can disagree very passionately, we have the ballot box. We have legitimacy. We have to be able to see ourselves in this country. We have to be able to see a light at the end of this tunnel. And, whether you lose an election or win an election, there's always another one. And that's what, at least I try to teach my children. That's what I try to teach my friends, to try to understand that we're all on this long thread here. Political violence is never acceptable because the only real way our founders wanted it, the only way we can do it is through legitimate elections, free and fair elections, and we have to have faith in that. We have to have faith in each other. We have to cool down the rhetoric, cool down the dehumanizing language. Remember that we're all in this country together. We can solve problems together, even if it doesn't always seem that way. And as a closing remark, and this is a little bit originally what I was going to talk about the founders, I don't like the term the founders. I don't like it because there isn't one voice. The founders disagreed vehemently. You get Madison, Hamilton, Jefferson in a room together, they were going to be, they weren't going to be physically violent, but they were going to be using their soaring oratory and their wit, and they were going to really hash it out. But they did come together to write that Constitution, and even as the ink was dry, they still disagreed on what they meant. So, we still had Supreme Court decisions, we still had reinterpretations, etc. So when people say the founders, first of all, there is no such thing as the founders. They didn't speak with one mind. They didn't speak with one voice. There were many, and a lot of them were contradictory, and that's cool. That's okay. They still came together for the greater good. My second term that I'm going to leave you with is that I object to the term the founders because it fixes them at a period in time. There are no one founders. We're constantly refounding this country. All of us are founders. Our children will be founders, grandchildren, great-grandchildren. Every election we have is a refounding of America. We weren't perfect in the beginning. We formed a more perfect union. We're not perfect now. We will keep forming a more perfect union. And we have to remember that. We have to be able to see ourselves through the legitimacy and not succumb to dehumanizing language, dehumanizing each other. That's not right, because we're all part of this tapestry, and together we will keep forging ahead in this nation of the people, by the people, and for the people, that will not perish from this earth. So we are all founders. That's what I feel about the founding principles here in 2024, is that they are alive and well, and that they will continue. And so we have to condemn political violence. We have to understand the context that, unfortunately, it is part of something we've always had to deal with. Previous generations had to deal with it. Unfortunately, I think future generations will as well. That doesn't make it okay. That doesn't make what happened yesterday okay. But I think we can move forward together. But I think the big thing, and I'll take another step back, I don't know a lot about the shooter yet. I don't think a lot of us do, other than I've heard he was 20 years old, and that's just so heartbreaking. And I think that, I think about the youth, but I think this is with a lot of people. A lot of people feel hopeless right now, regardless of which side. I hear Republicans saying that they feel hopeless about Democrats. I hear Democrats saying they feel hopeless about Republicans. We have to stop pretending it's the end of the world. We have to get together. We have to be able to work out our differences and understand the ebb and flow, the give and take, and promote good candidates who are willing to cool the temperature and not add gasoline to the fire. And that's all I really have to say. I think that's what the founders would want, and as much as we can talk about the founders. So, thanks.